Hello and welcome to Easy English Stories. Today, we are diving into one of the most perplexing mysteries in the history of written language, a manuscript so strange that it has confounded cryptographers, linguists, and historians for over a century. This story is called the Voynich Manuscript, the book no one can read, and it is for Level 3 learners. So listen carefully for more advanced vocabulary and sentence structures. Let's begin. Deep within the Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, sealed in climate-controlled storage, sits a small, unassuming book bound in soft vellum. At first glance, it resembles countless other medieval manuscripts, filled with elaborate illustrations and dense flowing script. But this particular book has resisted every serious attempt at decipherment for more than 100 years, and quite possibly for several centuries before that. The manuscript takes its name from Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who purchased it in 1912 from a Jesuit college in Italy, where it had apparently languished, unread and largely forgotten, among a collection of older texts. Voynich himself had led a remarkably eventful life before becoming a rare book dealer, having once been imprisoned in Siberia for revolutionary political activities before escaping and eventually settling in London, where he built a reputation for acquiring rare and unusual manuscripts from across Europe. According to Voynich's own account, he discovered the manuscript among a chest of books the Jesuits were quietly selling to raise funds, tucked away almost as an afterthought amid more conventional theological and historical texts. Voynich, immediately recognizing that he possessed something extraordinary, if not necessarily comprehensible, spent considerable effort attempting to authenticate its age and, if possible, to unravel its contents. He carried the manuscript with him for years, showing it to scholars across Europe and America, hoping someone, somewhere, might recognize its script or offer some plausible explanation. He never succeeded in either endeavor entirely, though the manuscript's age has since been established with reasonable scientific confidence, long after his own death in 1930. The book itself consists of approximately 240 vellum pages, though scholars believe several pages have been lost over the centuries, and some pages fold out to considerably larger sizes than the rest of the book, suggesting the original author intended certain diagrams to be viewed as expansive, unified images, rather than confined to a single page. The text is written in an unknown script, composed of characters that resemble no known alphabet, arranged in patterns that follow certain statistical regularities suggestive of genuine language, rather than random scribbling. This detail alone has tantalized codebreakers for generations, since gibberish typically lacks the structural consistencies that linguists have identified within the Voynich text, including patterns in word length, letter frequency, and word repetition that closely mirror properties found in genuine natural languages around the world. The manuscript is lavishly illustrated, and its illustrations fall into several distinct categories that have led scholars to divide the book into sections. The first, and perhaps most famous, section depicts plants, dozens of them, rendered in careful, colorful detail. The peculiar difficulty here is that almost none of these plants correspond to any known species. Some botanists have proposed that the illustrator may have combined features from multiple real plants into imaginative composites, while others have suggested these might depict entirely fictional or symbolic flora, perhaps used in alchemical or medicinal contexts common to medieval scholarship. A second section, often called the astronomical or cosmological section, contains circular diagrams resembling star charts, zodiac symbols, and what appear to be astronomical bodies, interspersed with small, delicate figures of nude women, often positioned within or around these circular designs. Scholars remain divided on whether these diagrams represent genuine astronomical knowledge, astrological practice, or something entirely more obscure and symbolic. Perhaps the most peculiar section of all is what researchers have labeled the balneological section, depicting numerous small, nude female figures bathing in elaborate networks of interconnected pools, tubes, and vessels, some of which resemble anatomical structures, leading some scholars to speculate about connections to early medical or gynecological texts, though no consensus has emerged. The final major section, sometimes called the pharmaceutical section, displays rows of labeled jars and containers alongside plant fragments, suggesting some sort of recipe or herbal remedy catalog, a format familiar from other medieval texts concerning medicine and pharmacology. Radiocarbon dating conducted in 2009 by researchers at the University of Arizona determined that the vellum itself dates to somewhere between 1404 and 1438, placing the manuscript's creation firmly within the early 15th century. This scientific dating eliminated several long-standing theories, including speculation that the manuscript might be a considerably later forgery created by, among other suspects, Voynich himself, seeking to profit from a fabricated curiosity. Since its rediscovery, the Voynich Manuscript has attracted the attention of some of history's most accomplished codebreakers. During the Second World War, several cryptographers who had worked on breaking Axis military codes turned their considerable talents toward the manuscript in their spare time, believing, perhaps optimistically, that skills honed against sophisticated modern encryption might unlock a medieval mystery. One such group, working informally under the leadership of a respected American cryptanalyst named William Friedman, met regularly for years, treating the manuscript almost as an intellectual puzzle to be solved between their more official wartime and post-war duties. Friedman himself grew convinced, toward the end of his life, that the manuscript represented some form of constructed language, rather than a straightforward cipher, though even he, with decades of world-class cryptanalytic experience behind him, was ultimately forced to concede defeat. They made no definitive progress. Numerous theories have emerged over the decades, attempting to explain the manuscript's puzzling text. One prominent theory suggests the document represents an early example of a constructed language, an invented system of communication rather than an encoding of any existing natural language. Proponents of this theory point to certain statistical patterns within the text that differ meaningfully from known European languages, yet still exhibit the kind of structured repetition one might expect from a deliberately designed linguistic system. Another influential theory proposes that the manuscript employs a sophisticated cipher, an encoded version of some known language, disguised through substitution, transposition, or some more elaborate encryption technique. Substitution, transposition, or some more elaborate encryption technique. Various researchers have claimed, at different points, to have cracked this supposed cipher, proposing translations into Latin, various Slavic languages, or even Hebrew. None of these proposed solutions have withstood rigorous scholarly scrutiny, however, typically failing to produce coherent, consistent translations across the entirety of the text. A more skeptical theory gaining considerable traction among some linguists in recent years suggests the manuscript might be an elaborate hoax, produced not to deceive contemporary readers, but perhaps as a sophisticated exercise in what researchers term meaningless text generation. Employing a simple algorithmic method, such as a grid-based word generation system using cards or tables, to produce text that mimics the statistical properties of genuine language without conveying any actual semantic content whatsoever. One researcher demonstrated in 2013 that a relatively simple table-based method could, in principle, generate text exhibiting some of the same statistical quirks found in the manuscript, lending this theory renewed academic attention, even though it fell short of proving definitively that this was how the actual manuscript had been created centuries earlier. Under this theory, the manuscript's illustrations, however peculiar, might simply serve decorative or thematic purposes, unconnected to any coherent underlying message the text purports to encode. Yet this hoax theory faces its own significant obstacles. Producing text exhibiting such consistent statistical regularities across 240 pages without the aid of modern computational tools would represent an extraordinarily labor-intensive undertaking for a medieval forger, particularly one whose presumed motivation remains entirely unclear. Who, after all, stood to profit from deceiving readers centuries before Voynich's own rediscovery brought the manuscript any commercial attention? Some researchers have proposed more unconventional theories still, suggesting the manuscript might document a lost or extinct natural language, perhaps spoken by some obscure regional population whose linguistic tradition has otherwise vanished entirely from historical record. Others have speculated about possible connections to Voynich Manuscript's provenance, tracing its documented history backward through various European collectors, in hopes that identifying its original author might illuminate its purpose. Though this documented history extends back only as far as the early 17th century with any reasonable certainty, leaving a considerable historical gap before that point entirely unaccounted for. In recent years, computational linguistics and artificial intelligence have offered new avenues for analysis previously unavailable to researchers. Machine learning algorithms have been employed to search for patterns within the text that might correspond to known linguistic structures, comparing the manuscript's statistical properties against vast databases of known languages. In 2018, researchers using natural language processing techniques suggested the text might exhibit underlying features of Hebrew, proposing that certain words, when decoded through a specific algorithmic method, resembled recognizable Hebrew vocabulary. These computational approaches have yielded intriguing observations, including apparent similarities to certain features of Hebrew and other Semitic languages. Though these findings remain contested and have not produced any widely accepted translation, with critics pointing out that applying enough different decoding methods to any sufficiently large body of text will eventually produce coincidental matches to almost any target language one wishes to find. One particularly notable claim emerged in 2019 when a British academic proposed that the manuscript was written in an abbreviated form of medieval Latin, focused on women's health and reproductive matters, a theory that generated considerable media attention, including headlines around the world proclaiming the centuries-old mystery finally solved. However, the broader scholarly community swiftly identified significant methodological problems with this proposed decipherment, noting that the translated passages produced through this method read as grammatically incoherent, and could apply this same criticism to nearly any text run through a similarly loose translation framework. The theory has not achieved consensus acceptance among Voynich researchers, and the manuscript's fundamental mystery remains, once again, firmly intact. What makes the Voynich manuscript such an enduringly fascinating puzzle is precisely this combination of factors. A document old enough to predate easy explanation as a modern hoax, sophisticated enough in its apparent linguistic structure to resist dismissal as meaningless scribbling, yet stubborn enough in its silence to have defeated every credentialed expert who has attempted to unlock its secrets for over a century. The manuscript currently remains housed at Yale University, occasionally displayed to the public, and increasingly available in high-resolution digital scans that allow researchers and curious amateurs worldwide to examine its pages without needing to travel to Connecticut or request special access to rare archival materials. This democratization of access has, if anything, only intensified interest in the mystery, drawing amateur cryptographers, linguists, and simply curious minds into an ongoing, informal collaborative effort to succeed where so many credentialed specialists have failed. Perhaps what the Voynich manuscript ultimately teaches us extends beyond any single proposed solution to its riddle. It reminds us that certainty, even regarding something as fundamental as written language, is never entirely guaranteed, that human ingenuity in constructing puzzles can sometimes exceed our subsequent ingenuity in solving them, and that some mysteries persist not because we lack sufficiently clever minds to address them, but because the evidence available to us remains genuinely, frustratingly, insufficient to reach any definitive conclusion. Now, it's time to learn vocabulary from today's story. Confound means to confuse or puzzle someone completely. Example, the manuscript has confounded experts for over a century. Decipherment means the act of figuring out the meaning of something written in code or unknown script. Example, every attempt at decipherment has failed. Authenticate means to prove that something is genuine or real. Example, he tried to authenticate the manuscript's age. Tantalize means to tempt or excite someone with something just out of reach. Example, the mystery has tantalized codebreakers for generations. Composite means something made by combining different parts or elements. Example, the plants may be imaginative composites. Obscure means not well known or difficult to understand. Example, the symbols remain obscure to researchers. Provenance means the origin or history of ownership of an object. Example, its provenance can only be traced back so far. Consensus means general agreement among a group of people. Example, no scholarly consensus has emerged. Scrutiny means careful and thorough examination. Example, the theory did not withstand rigorous scrutiny. Democratization means the process of making something accessible to more people. Example, digital scans allowed the democratization of access to the manuscript. Coincidental means happening by chance rather than by design or planning. Example, critics argued the matches were merely coincidental. Incoherent means not logically connected or clear in meaning. Example, the translated passages read as grammatically incoherent. Contested means disputed or argued about by different people. Example, these findings remain contested among scholars. Try to use these words in your own sentences. That is one of the best ways to remember them, especially at this more advanced level. Now it's time for shadowing practice. Listen and repeat after me. Speak slowly, clearly, and with feeling. Nobody has ever fully read this book. Its script resembles no known alphabet. Its plants match no known species. Codebreakers have tried and failed for a century. Radiocarbon dating confirmed its true age. Some believe it is an invented language. Some believe it is an elaborate hoax. The mystery remains genuinely unsolved today. Practice these lines several times. Try to capture both the meaning and the rhythm of each sentence. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Easy English Stories. I hope this story helped you practice more advanced English while exploring one of history's most genuinely unsolved puzzles. Now, I have a few questions for you. Which theory about the Voynich Manuscript do you find most convincing? Would you want to know the truth even if it turned out to be something disappointing, like an elaborate hoax? What other historical mysteries would you like us to explore in a future episode? Please write your answers in the comments below. I would love to read your thoughts. If this story fascinated you, please like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more mysteries and stories like this one. Take care, keep learning, and see you next time on Easy English Stories.